Welcome back to pregame.tv. I'm Marco D'Angelo, joined by Bryan Leonard. We're looking at the weekend edition here at pregame. We're going to look at Minnesota at Iowa. Bryan, this is going to be my best bet, so I'm going to start it off. Minnesota, pure and simple, I think this is the worst 4-0 team in college football. They're 4-0. They haven't played anybody. UNLV, New Hampshire, Western Michigan, last week Syracuse. Tell me where I'm wrong. I know you're going to.
You know, it's funny because at the Tuesday meeting, one of the other handicappers that are there that we really respect is on the other side of this game, and you both made great points. And at the time, I was leaning his way. You know, with Minnesota, the reason being is how can Iowa lay 7 points? But then I did a little bit more digging on this game, and go back and you mentioned the teams that Minnesota has played. You know, they play UNLV, they give up 13 points, or they score 13 points in regulation, 28 points against Western Michigan. Pretty good MAC team, not a team that plays a lot of defense. And then 17 against Syracuse, a team that's been giving up points to everybody.
Well, the Syracuse, this is what's more alarming to me. No, first of all, I'll admit I had Syracuse last week in that game, so I got a little bit of sour grapes with that one. But Syracuse turned the ball over 4 times. They turned it over 4 times. And Syracuse doesn't have the world's greatest defense. You look at some of the games they've had this year. Minnesota only scored 17 points, being the benefactor of 4 turnovers. That puts up a big, big red flag for me in this game. And it's one of the reasons it got me looking at the Iowa team. And if you look at the history between these teams, and I know, history doesn't mean anything today because you got to play with the players that are on the field. But you've never seen a number like this at Iowa between these two schools, only laying 7 points.
Yeah, that tells you right there the difference in these teams compared to past seasons. And, this is a big game for Iowa, double revenge game for Iowa in a series they had dominated. I mean, the last 2 years, Minnesota's a 15.5 and 15-point underdog. They win those games straight up.
They did. And ironically, did you notice that both of those games were at Minnesota? Instead, it wasn't home and home. Both games were at at Minnesota. So this is the first time back at Iowa. I like this game a lot. You took the revenge out of it. The other part of it is Iowa forced no turnovers last week against Central Michigan. And that was the first time this year that they did not force a turnover. I dug up a little stat with the Iowa coach since he's been there. Anytime they've had a game where they've had no forced turnovers the week before, in the next game, they're 11-2 against the spread since he's been there. Now, it's a quirky little stat, but if you dig deeper into a stat like that, to me, that means he fires up his defense. This team they weren't swarming to the ball, they weren't hitting hard, and that means they're going to have a hard practice that week. That's what I take out of a stat like that.
I agree, and Iowa's known for their defense. So when you don't force any turnovers, that side of the ball is going to get a lot of attention. And I've got a stat for you. I went back and looked over Iowa. They're now 12-3-1 ATS off an outright loss during the regular season. So they've got that going for them. And a lot of people look at that game last week against Central Michigan, and I mentioned this, and people blew it off a few weeks ago at the Tuesday meeting, but that was definitely a down game for Iowa because they had just played Iowa State and Northern Iowa. I don't want to call them in-state rivals. It was probably more of a rivalry for the other team.
Right.
But it's a game, they're recruiting against with those kids, and you've got to be able to beat those teams, and the other teams played pretty well against them. And then all of a sudden you got Central Michigan coming in who had done nothing before that. So definitely a letdown situation.
All right, well, before I get to my official best bet here, I got to ask a question. The memo with the, on the new studio and dressing up, you making a statement with the Indians shirt today?
Actually, Manny Acta had a going out of business sale, and I was able to pick this up at a pretty good price. So this is in honor of my Cleveland Indians.
For those that don't know, we're taping on Thursday, and the manager got fired today. So they're going with Alomar for the rest of the season. Good luck for him. But let's get to it. We've talked it out. Let's make it official. It is my video best bet. I'm going with Iowa. I'm going to lay the 7 points here. I think this is an absolutely soft number. Minnesota overrated at 4-0. And as I said, I can't emphasize the fact this is the worst 4-0 football team I have ever seen. They're traveling on the road to play Iowa. Iowa's coming off a shocker loss last week. They're going to be fired up. They're going to be drilled in practice this week by their coach. I look for a big effort from Iowa. I've got Iowa winning this game 30-17. team as my video best bet. And we are 4-1 so far this year with the video best bet. So let's get this one home. Bryan, any last closing thought from you?
Had to dig on my Indians with your Pirates going in the toilet.
I tweeted it out today how bad the Pirates are. Don't worry about it. I'm in mourning, another losing season. All right, we're going to be right back here. We're going to have Bryan's best bet up next. It's Baylor, West Virginia. This is going to be a fun one, guys. Stay tuned here at pregame.tv for Bryan's best bet up next.